Well, hello, pilgrims. How are you today? Yeah, there we go. Hey, yeah, there we go. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. Been a while, sorry. I've been busy, got a lot of house guests. Bob is here, my son's here, and we spend a lot of time talking. And I mean, if you could put these conversations into a book, wow, very fascinating stuff. I'm very fortunate to know such incredibly interesting people. Today, I want to start. Maybe I can finish it in one go. Maybe I can't. None of these things are planned, by the way. Like, not even the three-parters. I just have a vague idea about what I want to talk about, and then I go and do the podcast. And then the freaky thing is, people send me this like corollary information, like Rudolf Steiner and Helena Blavatsky. And I watch these short 20-minute videos, and I'm just kind of hitting a bullseye here. And I don't even know how I'm doing it. It's just all from my heart. You know, she didn't actually use the expression material pornography. That's a Bruce McDonald original. But Blavatsky understood the concept perfectly and warned about it. And Steiner, he warned about this moment, we're in now, the eighth circle, where, these technocrats would try and take over the human race to control the soul as a battery or energy source. By the way, Steiner also predicted a vaccine that would try and inhibit people's connection with their soul. And keep in mind, he's predicting all this stuff 120 years ago. Really kind of amazing. So it's a little, thank you for you guys who send me that stuff. I feel like I'm on the right track. But just so you know, this is all inspired podcasting from my heart, my spirit, from soul. I don't want to say my soul, because we don't have souls. You can't lose your soul. You can't sell your soul. Those things are euphemisms for giving up your free will for a period of time, going into a fixed contract with a force that has the ability to realize that limitation in you. That's all it is, okay? And some of them can be multi-life depending on what the contract is and what you got yourself into. They can be broken, but you got to do it. You got to be very serious about breaking them. So the idea on my mind now is the theory of systems. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the theory of systems, or system theory, or what they call it, and then in the modern world. But then we're going to put my usual spin on it, and I'll explain to you how these systems are going wrong, really. Okay, so I'm just going to begin with the general definition of systems theory from Wikipedia. Nothing fancy here, okay? So I'm just going to read it now. Systems theory is the transdisciplinary study of systems. For example, cohesive groups of interrelated, interdependent components that can be natural or artificial. That's a key point right there, okay? The best system theorist is God, because natural systems work perfectly. Okay, so just keep that as a bookmark in your mind for when I get into it later. Every system has causal boundaries, is influenced by its context, defined by its structure, function, and role, and expressed through its relations with other systems. A system is more than the sum of its parts when it expresses synergy or emergent behavior. Let's just take a look at that because it's important to get those definitions. What is synergy? It's an interaction of cooperation giving rise to a whole that is greater than the simple sum of its parts. This is God's systems, right? Nobody can deconstruct nature. You know, I've said it before on the Talamanca review. I mean, if you were to just take ants out of the ecosystem, everything would collapse. If you were to take spiders out, everything would collapse. If you were to take bees out, according to Einstein, when bees go away, the human ecosystem has 4 more years to survive, and then it's wasteland. So it's very interesting how these things work and how integral parts cannot be done away with. And as I've said before, the only thing in this system that could be done away with is the human being. And in many ways, the human incarnation, and if you're human on this planet, you've probably been everything else already. Because we go through the entirety of the energetic incarnation system on a planet. This is the migration of consciousness, which is the pure refined energy of God, which is unconditional love. And you can only really attribute just the vaguest of ideas to God, because God is really unknowable and unfathomable, and you'll never see God. You know, but you know God's there. It's like you're a farmer and you know you have a fox, and you never see the fox, but you see footprints in the snow. It's the same thing with God. And so the greatest system is the natural system, the solar system, the galactic system, everything. Now let's take emergent behavior. In philosophy and systems theory, science and art, emergence occurs when a complex entity has properties or behaviors that its parts do not have on their own and emerge only when they interact in a wider whole. Now I want you to think about that in context to the emergent AI. Now, what happens is the machine does not become intelligent or self-aware. That is an error. What happens is the machine gets so complicated in terms of its system that it can be presented as a suitable host for an entity that is non-corporeal. Now, I don't want you to panic about this because most people think demon. And certainly there are a lot of Christian intellectuals out there talking about demonology and systems, especially silicon-based, electrical-based systems, because the silicon and the electricity are a couple of the components necessary to host life. We have electricity in our bodies, and our base is carbon, but silicon is another base substance on the planet that could evolve to life. Well, it's quite fascinating. I think, where did they get into the... Ridley Scott gets into this in the Alien movies, okay, and especially the one Prometheus, I think it was called, with Michael Fassbender as the android. They talk about the building blocks of life, and the 2 base building blocks in our system on planet Earth. There would be others on other planets, okay, but ours are silicon and carbon. We're the carbon, and we're creating the silicon life forms, okay? So it's very interesting to think about. Now, let's get back to this definition. Changing one component of a system may affect other components or the whole system. It may be possible to predict these changes in patterns of behavior. For systems that learn and adapt, the growth and the degree of adaptation depend upon how well the system is engaged with its environment and other contexts influencing its organization. Some systems support other systems, maintaining the other system to prevent failure. The goals of systems theory are to model a system's dynamics, constraints, conditions, and relations, and to elucidate principles, such as purpose, measure, methods, tools, that can be discerned and applied to other systems at every level of nesting, and in a wide range of fields for achieving optimized equifinality. We'll take a look at that. It is the principle that in open systems, a given end state can be reached by many potential means. The term and concept is due to the German Hans Drische, the developmental biologist, later applied by the Austrian Ludwig von Bertalanffy, the founder of general systems theory. Pretty heady stuff, and I don't mean to do such like a college course for a podcast, but believe me, you're going to be glad I went over this, because once I'm done with this stuff, I'm going butterfly wings. General systems theory is about developing broadly applicable concepts and principles, as opposed to concepts and principles specific to one domain of knowledge. It distinguishes dynamic or active systems from static or passive systems. Active systems are activity structures or components that interact in behaviors and processes or interrelate through formal contextual boundary conditions, attractors. Passive systems are structures and components that are being processed. For example, a computer program is passive when it is a file stored on the hard drive and active when it runs in memory. The field is related to systems thinking, machine logic, and systems engineering. Okay. Now, I got another day of smoking. I'm just going to enjoy it. I used to love cigars. We all leave tomorrow for San Jose. Don't actually fly out till the 27th, but we're going to my daughter-in-law's house to sleep, and she lives near the airport, so it's a good deal for everybody. Now, here's my problem. There's a tremendous imbalance in the way we seek and gather knowledge. We've been in a state of imbalance for about 500 years. I'm not saying that the Middle Ages were perfect or what we know of them, but remember, 90% of history is a lie. Right? I know many of you believe in the Tartarian Empire, meaning that the Middle Ages is a complete farce. I don't, at this moment, have any deliberate opinion on those things because I've never focused on them. I've never laid my contemplative being to those things. I've never contemplated them. I'm just not interested. This podcast on systems theory came to me as an inspiration, just talking to Brandon and Bob. So let's begin by taking a look at a natural system. The family is a natural system, and it has a male and a male and a female polarity. Okay? And so in atomic structure, it's defined as negative and positive. And I would, because God creates in fractals, that principle goes through everything. So all dualistic systems have to have a negative and a positive. And some of the interpretations are human subjective, meaning that there might not be a rational reason for them. So between day and night, we would allocate the positive pole to day when the sun is out and the negative pole to night when you have either no light or limited light by moon, which is a reflection of the sun. So the night is the negative and the day is the positive. You see how that works? Now, I'm very hesitant to say the next part because I don't want to offend people, but it's just true, okay? And because I've committed myself to saying things that are true, I'm not going to hesitate, but I am hesitant. The male is the positive and the female is the negative, okay? And if you're honest about this and you can get through all of the propaganda Margaret Atwood put into your head with Gilead and The Handmaid's Tale and feminism and all of this stuff, you'll realize it's true. You'll also realize that feminism is a disaster and that women are a disaster in 2025. Women are a catastrophe right now in the first world, okay? And it was principally the female, because they have the most biological autonomy. And I want you to think about that. What do I mean by that? Well, biological autonomy means that you're not completely controlled by your biology. Men are very controlled by our biology. The male throughout the mammalian world is controlled by its biology. You can profound difference between a male and a female cat. You're talking to a guy who's had over 40 cats in the last 5 or 6 years. I presently have 8 cats, or 9 with the kitten. Profound difference between a male and a female cat. Profound difference between a male and a female dog. Okay? And a profound difference between a male and a female human being. Now, if you look at the Chinese metaphor of heaven and earth, which is a constant duality used in the Tao what's Lao Tzu's principle? I was going to say Tao Te Ching, but that's the book of divination. Lao Tzu's, I think it's just called the Tao or the Way. Heaven and earth. So heaven is the positive and the earth is the negative. Okay? And if you follow that fractal, and he's correct, so women are more connected to nature. And this is what freaks me out about the modern women. None of them want to go out and live as frontierswomen. They don't want to live. I was very lucky to find a woman who wants to live with me here. Okay, because even in Costa Rica, most of the women go to the cities now. Okay, and they're drawn to it because it's like an amplified opportunity for them. Men present themselves to women as selectable, and generally women get to select. This is and that is right and just, because the women are responsible for continuing the human species. So just because we in the model we affix negativity to the female doesn't mean the feminine is negative. It isn't negative. It's very positive. It's just in this charging structure, this torsion field, and negative and positive spinning around a center is a torsion field. And everything is these torsion fields, okay? And that's why you feel so many dramatic push and pull forces in human relationships. And that's what they are. They're push and pull. Magnetic pull or magnetic repulsion, right? So the woman is grounded to the earth and responsible, and this is a huge responsibility given to women. And, that maniac, Kabbalistic, psychic terrorist, Sigmund Freud, said that women have penis envy. I seriously doubt that. But I'll tell you what, I have creational envy for what women can do. It is amazing that a woman can hold a life for 9 months, birth a new life, nurture that life well, no matter what their level of education, no matter what their living circumstances, whether they be a Bedouin woman in the deserts of the Middle East or a Kebakar woman in the jungles of the Talamanca Mountains, or my wife. Women know how to raise children. They know, and it's probably the most important responsibility in the species. And it was given to women, not men. Okay? So we attribute the negative to it because it's all based with earth and matter and organic nature. And we attribute the positive to the male because the male is always seeking the celestial kingdom. And the only place this is clearly stated is, I think, in the Quran, and Muhammad gets it right. Now, there's a lot of things the Quran gets right. And when I bring these things up, don't bite my head off because you don't like Islam. I mean, truth is truth, okay? So in the Quran, it says that religious and spiritual instruction of the children is the responsibility of the father. In fact, the woman's not even allowed to do it. She just supports the father. But all the things related to the house are the woman. And so you see a religious tract which attempts to set up a religiously codified system to maintain the family. And the Muslim world is one of the few cultures on the planet that is maintaining the family. And the family is a microsystem in nature that is absolutely necessary. And don't let anybody tell you differently. Okay? One of the reasons the black race has not properly evolved is they fractured the nuclear family in the 20th century, largely due to a direct attack by the controllers. The American blacks were used as a test group, a test ethnicity, to test the theory of family fracture, and they succeeded. And they crippled the black race because you do not develop correctly, psychologically or spiritually, if you don't have equal access to your mother and father. And more importantly, if you don't see them working together in some way for their greater good. Very important thing to understand. So, then we get up into the 70s, and by this time they'd already done the job on the blacks. They were the test case. This is where you get into I forget that woman who was involved in eugenics in the United States. Hillary Clinton's a big fan of hers. It might have been Margaret Mead, actually. So they attacked the black race. And by the way, I'm predicting a black renaissance in the 21st or 22nd century. They're due for a massive renaissance because they've been operating at 5% of their expressive capability for intelligence, arts, science, and everything. Black people are not what we've been led to believe they are. They are actually a magnificent race, okay? Always have been, but they've been under extreme attack for a long time. Probably the most attacked and tormented people on the earth. Well, publicly the Jews like to make that claim, but it's not true. It's the blacks, okay? And in my estimation, they're due for a renaissance. Now, getting back on topic. So the family is a basic natural system that exists everywhere I go. It exists in the jungle here. It exists in the Costa Ricans, although they're dealing with fractured families in Gen X now. Gen Z. A lot of my nieces and nephews, they leave their husbands or wives when the child is 2 or 3 years old. I literally can't understand it. I mean, it is such a failure of consciousness. It's unbelievable. I mean, human sexuality exists to create families. That's it. That's all it exists for. Okay? Everything else we do, in its most benign characterization, we could call it fertility rituals to stimulate fertility. Because when you're living in an unstimulated environment, the sexual rhythm is very slow. You're not getting horny all the time. You understand? It's very slow. You can get it off your mind. But when you're living in a highly stimulated environment, like North America, you're thinking about sex all the time. It's a constant, it's almost like what a version of what they do to the adrenal gland when they're trying to harvest adrenochrome. They're doing that to all of us through the sexual chakra now. They're massively overstimulating it. And they're doing that, in my estimation, to break up the families. Because they have a new system coming in. And families don't factor into it. Children do, but families do not. Okay? And you can hear creepy statements along the way, like Hillary Clinton comes to mind. It takes a village to raise a child. Really, Hillary? Okay. The village doesn't raise the child. The village is the culture the child is raised in, but the parents raise the child. Okay? The success or failure of children is completely dependent on the parents. Completely dependent on the parents. So there's an example of a natural system. Permaculture is an example of an attempt to return to natural organic food growing. And you can look that up. I'm not going to do a big dissertation on it. The 28-day lunar cycle is a natural system. And because everything is connected, it correlates to our bodies because it affects water, among other things. And a human being, at its base constituent level, its elemental level is largely water. So, the moon affects us. And it's no accident that the reproductive cycle in the female womb is 28 days. So you can see this entire system we live in. Okay? And this is the basis of studying it is the basis of the ancient occult knowledge. Okay? And you can see countless people kind of butchering this in various distribution points. I kind of always use that archaics guy, but it is what it is, right? And there's many other podcasters who do the same thing. Okay? So now I want you to think about The Devil in Us, a memoir of you and me, for those of you who've read it. And if you haven't, for God's sake, buy the book. You can get an EPUB for $9.99. It's immediate transport to your iPad or your Android tablet, or whatever. And it'll read it aloud to you. It's worth listening to. My specialty is tying things together. My specialty is reconstructing deconstructed things. And I reconstruct 144 years, 4 generations of Western civilization, to attempt to tell you what's really going on in the world as led by the first world. And I do a very good job of it, but I didn't get everything. And that's just the world we live in. But as I continue to podcast, I think about things that I left out. Okay? Now, when you look at the systems that we live in now, that allow for, number one, an artificial environment. And the book that covers this the best is Stardust Ranch, The Incredible True Story, in a chapter called Crossroads. And I'll do an audio version of that tonight and put it up on Substack and YouTube. Now, here is the problem with human systems. For a system to be functional, it can't have any byproducts that are outside the host system. The host system is the natural. Okay? And the natural is primarily the world we live on, and the solar system, and then the galaxy, and then the universe, but primarily the world. So the world is the template for every subordinate system. Every system human beings create lives at the grace of the existing natural system. If we did not have a natural system with these millions of species doing what they need to do, whether they be plant, insect, bird, mammal, reptile, ocean species, everything is required to allow us to be human beings on this planet. Okay? So we are the ultimate expression of the natural system here. And our goal is to extend our consciousness back to the Creator. Simply put, there's no other reason human life was created. You're allowed to do all kinds of things to learn and grow as you make that journey back to the Creator. And the Creator is not like the gods we defined. It's not Shiva, it's not Vishnu, it's not Brahma, it's not Yahweh, it's not Jehovah. It's none of these things. It's none of the voodoo gods. It's none of the Palo Mayombe gods. Those are generally entities that are feeding off of us at a higher level of existence, just the way we feed on what's below us. You see how it works? So, to be in compliance with the system that we live in, every subordinate system we create has to adhere to the laws of the primary system. The primary system creates nothing it cannot dispose of. Okay? A tree falls over in the forest, it'll be eaten by insects and decomposed, and the minerals will go back into the earth, and those minerals will be used as the nutritional basis for new life, reincarnation, if you will. Life appearing in the same form or similar form as it did before, based on the same constituent elements of this earth that allow life to exist. When something has died, it's put back to the earth, okay? We eat things that grow from this earth. And we should be doing that in a much more respectful way, okay? And we should be living in the natural system, and we should not be losing contact with it. Not physical contact, nor cognitive contact. Physical contact is the ability to engage nature. And look, I'm sorry, Central Park doesn't count. Okay, yeah, it's a big natural space in the middle of New York City. But that's not what I'm talking about. You need to be in a natural system that has its naturally functioning autonomous life, right up to complex mammals, like wild boar, like monkeys, or bears, or jaguars, or cougars, or mountain lions, if you're in North America. and you live in that environment, and that environment reminds you that you are a component part of a system that existed before you, will exist after you, and is completely autonomous to your existence. It doesn't need you for anything. It unconditionally gives you your life. How many people have you met in your life who've ever realized that and expressed gratitude? It's not their fault. It's the way we're raised, and it's where we're raised. Okay? So that's what I mean by the physical connection with the natural world. The cognitive connection has to do with the electromagnetic fields that they're putting into cities now. A city is literally a stew of electromagnetic fields now. Whether it be the street lights, the power lines, the cell towers, the various networks, all of it creates a toxic net over the cognition that inhibits the cognition's ability to perceive correctly. And this is before anything is implanted inside of us. You know, people are worried about Neuralink, brain chips, cyborgs. You're already halfway into that now. If you're living in Detroit or Cincinnati or Miami or Tulsa or New York or Los Angeles or Montreal or Halifax or Toronto or Vancouver. Sorry to be so North American centric to my European leaders. We'll throw Helsinki in there for you. And that's the way it works. Now, the ecosystem within which human beings live is a city. An ecosystem as a word and a living spiritual reality, which would have been a teaching lesson for everybody living with nature, can now be substituted with supply chain. Ecosystem is supply chain now. So the money masters have become the new ecosystem. And this is why they have so much power. It's almost like the myths and legends of the old wizards who could control the weather and control natural forces and, you know, this Middle Kingdom kind of stuff that the ones that Tolkien was fascinated with in Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, right? Well, those wizards exist, except they're just using money as the foundation of their magic, and they can cripple cities and cripple nations and all of these things. Economics is the first and most powerful form of warfare right now. We don't go to physical warfare anymore unless economic warfare fails. Now, these last 2 points, or 2 or 3 points, sum up today's podcast on systems theory. To create these artificial environments that cut us off from nature and cut us off from the rhythms that fit into nature, the circadian rhythm, they had to illuminate cities. And to do that, they electrified the cities. And I believe the electrical bill, I mean, if you want to go back to the light of darkness, you could say the carbon tax was the first monthly tax. But I think the first monthly bill would have been the electrical bill. Okay? So, here's the problem. The electrical system, from its very inception, was incapable of producing a clean system. To create the electricity, they had to build transformers. To keep the transformers from melting, They had to create a fluid that could keep them cool and not be evaporated. And so they created a chemical compound called PCBs, which are in the transformers and highly toxic to human beings. A PCB is a polychlorinated benzyl. And this would have been done sometime around 1905, 1910, maybe earlier. I don't do any research for these podcasts. I'm not out to win a legal case. I'm only out to pass realizations to you. That's my job, is to help you realize something. And the realization is all you need. You don't need the details once you realize it. So the polychlorinated benzyls are very difficult to dispose of, and we've been burying them in the ground for a long time now. Okay? Then what is the next great innovation in energy? Well, it's gasoline, which is a natural substance. It goes through a refining process, but to get it, we have to decimate a lot of the natural environment. Right? There's no way around that. We have to decimate a lot of the natural environment, and so we do. There's one example. And there were options where they did not in this system have to create a non-decomposable byproduct, which is a significant breach of system theory. Because system theory coming off nature has no byproducts. Okay? Yeah, hey, welcome back, folks. Actually had to take a... Hello? Yeah, I had to actually, had a business meeting there for 30 minutes with my boss and a new client right in the middle of this recording. I forgot about it, and then my calendar reminder popped up. So if you're watching this and it seems a little discontinuous, then that's why. So I gave the example of electricity, and then the other example I'm going to give is nuclear energy, okay? And that also has a non-remediable byproduct, and that is the enriched uranium or the depleted uranium. Right now they do use it in shell casings, but it should be a war crime to use that to irradiate generations of people, but this is the world we live in. And what I wanted to capture... What the fuck's going on in here? Yeah, well, that was a sudden interruption from my son. So nuclear energy is another example of this system breach, right? Now, now that I've taken the time to thoroughly explain it, you have the moral responsibility to decide, and this is the dividing line between rational thinking and so-called conspiracy theory. And this is why they always get away with it, because you can never quite nail them down. But if you look at this through the 20th century, all systems decisions they made, including getting both the father and the mother into the workforce and leaving the children in the hands of strangers, was all calculated. This has all been done intentionally. And we're coming up to this crossroad moment now where it's make or break for everything that's going on. And to break it, we have to break free of these systems. It's the only way, because if you live in their system, they control you. Look at what they can do with the economic sanctions. Look at what they did to the protesters and the donators, the people who didn't actually go to Ottawa, but simply donated money. That was all done through the system of policing they've created under emergency powers that Trudeau invoked. Okay? Any leader can do that at any time. All of the NATO countries, all of the G7 countries have emergency power provisions. Okay? Now make no mistake about it, this is the attempted takeover of this planet because we're the resource. Look, do you think it really matters whether you have 50 or $400 billion? Once you've got 3 billion, or let's say $10 billion, there's no material thing in existence you cannot have except maybe an aircraft, a decommissioned aircraft carrier or military tech. But you can have the $1 billion yacht, you can have the most incredible homes. You know, you're not going to get much more than 40 or 50 million for a mansion. So what more do you need materially? And the answer is nothing. And so all of this is about control at this point. And the pandemic was about consolidating more control into a fewer and fewer number of distribution points, Amazon being an example. Now, what I'm contending in this podcast is the entire science or pseudoscience of social systems theory. And I haven't done the one on human resources yet. I have to do a bit of research for that one. There was a French guy. This one comes out of Paris, by the way. And it was a French guy. And he is to human resources what Fauci is to modern medicine and vaccines. Okay? And when you look at this stuff long enough, the way I put together The Devil in Us, there's no way that you could allow yourself to believe that any of this is accidental, because it isn't. You're in a hostile system. You're being attacked every day. You're in a tank with no escape, and the water is rising only a millimeter a day. But 10 millimeters is a centimeter, 30 centimeters is a foot, right? So do the math. At some point, that water is going to go over your head and you're not going to be able to breathe. And this is the critical point we're at now with the systems theory. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.